LVMH will still be at head of the luxury sector. LVMH is today just at the beginning, in spite of its size. Our business model is based on creativity, innovation, and quality.
There aren't very many people in the world who can do what he's done.
In life, he is exactly the opposite what people think he is.
We're dealing with one of the most successful people in the world, one of the great taste makers in the world, somebody with the great vision, somebody with a great eye.
He's always thinking about the future, not only about the iconic titles, brands that he has.
People who don't know him have a completely different idea of the people who know him.
He's one of the wealthiest people in the world, and his wealth was accomplished in a single generation.
LVMH is comprised of 70 different brands divided into 6 different sectors. It covers everything from the highest end perfumes and wines to the best leather goods in the world.
In the 90s, had the idea of a luxury group. And at the time, I was very much criticized for it. I remember people telling me it does not make sense to put together so many brands.
You know the brands. It's Givenchy, it's Fendi, it's even Thomas Pink, Sephora.
Sephora, he again was completely ahead of the game. I remember when it first opened and everyone said he was crazy and it was never going to work.
He recognized that there would be a taste for luxury goods and frankly an ability to pay for them.
Bernard Arnault is the architect that brought them all together under one house.
And it was a success. It is a recognized success. When I was a child, I was always trying to have fun. I was always, what we say in French, dissipé in school, even if I was not bad at school, but I like fun. When I was young, I was living by my grandmother because my grandfather died in 1959. And I saw my grandmother very sad. And so I said one day to my father and my mother, okay, I cannot leave her alone because I liked her a lot, so I'm going to live with her. And I went on the other side of the street, so it's not very far. And she was extremely, extremely helpful.
I met him back in 1979 in Lille, in the north of France. He had recently joined his father's company, and I was still studying. I was in my last year of college, and I interned with him, actually with his father and him. Both were at the company at that time.
My grandfather founded a company in the north of France. Then my father ran the company, and I was always in contact with them. I was always very interested, and I never thought of doing anything else.
He started out as a civil engineer. He worked for his family's construction company.
And my father was really exceptional because he always gave me the sense of business. And when I arrived in the business with him, after 3 years, he told me, "Say, Guy, I think you are able to run the business, so let's do it." And he gave me the key. I was 25, and I was running. It was a small business, only 1,000 people, but it was risky for him because it's a business he built over his entire life.
By his mid-20s, he was making some pretty big changes. He wanted to move out of construction and manufacturing and into real estate.
And he was getting ready to invest in America, which was very unusual for a small real estate development company in France. France was very conservative at that time, but you didn't do that, especially at his age. He was still in his 20s. And it was very unusual for somebody of his age to take those types of decisions.
When we grew up, he was actually not in luxury, he was in real estate. It was really something incredible to witness, to see this incredible ascension.
He started looking for gems, for things that were undervalued, even outside of what his company had done previously.
I was looking at several ideas, and I hit Christian Dior. And immediately I thought this brand has a lot of potential. It is under-evaluated. It is small compared to what I thought the world was going to become, and so I moved to buy it.
Dior was a jolie madame house, you know, that nice French ladies wore to lunch, and it was not in any way creating fashion, making fashion. There was no excitement around it. It was very staid and very safe.
He's an extremely creative French entrepreneur who built the largest and best luxury brand in the world.
He was a complete visionary. He saw things that nobody else saw. He saw the increase of wealth in the world.
We try to build a large business with our partners with one criteria: the best quality and the most elitist product in every line that we are selling throughout the world.
It was a risky move at the time because it was much bigger than the company of my father, but starting from that, we built the LVMH today.
Bernard Arnault is the most talked about man in the fashion world today.
Dior itself does over $1 billion a year.
He does wonders with mergers and acquisitions.
When I was 10 or 11 years old, I understood that something was going on. You know, when you start seeing your father's face on TV and in the newspapers, when you also have people of 11 or 12 years old speaking to you about your own father, saying, oh, I hear he's incredible and a genius. So that's how it happens, actually. And so quite early on, we understood that something was going on.
If there's something he wants you to be aware of, he doesn't beat around the bushes. He'll be very, very straightforward.
He invested in an unbelievable way, and the numbers came back the way he expected.
When I go working in the morning, I always think I will have fun today with this or this.
I remember him telling me one day that 90% of his time was actually meetings that were not that interesting. He said the other 10% are absolutely fascinating. And then you speak to Karl Lagerfeld, or you'll spend an hour with Frank Gehry. These are the ones that you must enjoy, but the other ones are important and necessary too.
I am never bored. It's what I have in mind. When I think of myself young, it's fun, and I am very competitive. So it's like in tennis. I always want to win, and that's fun.
He and I share a great admiration for a tennis player called Roger Federer. And I think the happiest that I have ever seen Bernard was when his children secretly arranging for Bernard to have a match with Roger. And I swear, he showed me the video, he acted it out stroke by stroke. And then just last week, he was telling me about a more recent game that they had had. And at the end of the fifth game, it was 5-0, Roger said, well, I'm going to play now the way I would in a Grand Slam. He stepped it up, and all Bernard could talk to me about was the fact that he'd actually won 1 point.
I have been lucky, I must say, to have fantastic children. They are, all of them, interested by the family business.
So when I was 17, he gave me a pair of shoes, of Berluti shoes. They were the most incredible and beautiful shoes that I had ever seen. But yes, they gave me a sense of what this business was, of the rarity and the beauty of it all, but also it gave me a sense of responsibility. Indeed, at that time, I kind of understood, okay, this is going to be the business that I'm going to be in.
I'm very, very impressed with his relationship with his children. It's so attentive. Family is really all important to him, and he really makes the time. And I find that is something that people miss out, and it takes a very special human being to be able to do that.
A family business, especially in the luxury area, is key for success. When you are in a family, you have two major advantages. One is you can think long term, like Louis Vuitton, for instance. I'm not that much interested by the number of the next 6 months. What I am interested in is that the desire for the brand will be the same in 10 years as it is today. The second advantage of being a family business is to hire people. Because when people come to LVMH, they do not come in a group with some anonymity. They come in a family. You are not just a little person in a big thing. You are a member of the family and you will be taken care of as such.
Many of these luxury houses, many of these luxury companies began as family businesses. Luxury, by definition, has heritage. It has legacy. And that's what you find in the consistency of a family.
To have the empire he has, based upon talent and good management skills, but with very creative people who themselves probably think they're the best in the world at what they do, and in many cases they're right. And somehow he's able to get those people to work collaboratively and organize them and work for him, which is saying a lot.
He never ceases to surprise me with his risk-taking and his ability to understand how important the creative force is at every house, that without that you can have the most brilliant CEOs in the world, you can have incredible marketing, you have a brilliant strategy, but without a driving force behind each brand, that you have nothing.
A lot of people see him as a great financier, great strategic mind in terms of how to build an empire. That's not at all how he thinks. In my opinion. I think his big strength is actually to speak to creative people and to make them thrive under his management. It's not to create profit or create more revenue or double the size of the business. I know that's the consequence and that's usually what happens, but his real talent is with creative minds.
You know, the success of the group is made of the quality of the product. And the quality of the product is a consequence of the extraordinary craftsmen and women that are working with us. We have a large campaign of hiring young people that sometimes are not really thinking of becoming craftsmen or craftswomen. But once we have given them the idea and once we train them, we have a rate of success which is near 90%. And it's very rewarding for us to see these young people being so proud.
He's developed that long tradition of quality and craftsmanship, but he also adapts, and he adapts to the different generations.
You could think of Arnault as a merchant, but he's also thinking of just the tectonic plates and the shifts in the world.
I always try to think of what can we bring to a brand. If we are looking at buying a brand, what can the brand be, how can it be improved? Also, does it fit with the other brands? Most of the time it is a competitor, but does it fill a niche where we could see we are not very much present? And when that happens, I must say, we can move.
It takes a certain amount of courage to stand against the tide. There were a lot of naysayers. He was paying full prices for things that weren't close to what other people would want, and other people scoffed that he would ever realize value or earn anything from the prices that he was paying.
I met him when the Fendi takeover was in the air. There were other people who wanted Fendi too, but when I met him, I said to myself, this one and nobody else. And I was right. He invested in an unbelievable way, and the numbers came back the way he expected.
I am close to many of my businesses, but the one I have for the longest period of time is Christian Dior, followed by Louis Vuitton. So maybe these are the two I am the closest.
He knows what he wants for his brands. He manages to explain it quite clearly, and if the result doesn't correspond to what he wants, well, he will very politely but quite clearly throw campaigns away and have everybody rework.
Well, Bernard is a fascinating man. He's reserved, but also very direct and very clear. If there is something he wants you to be aware of, he doesn't beat around the bushes. He'll be very, very straightforward.
It's one thing to identify a moment in time and to have your taste and your vision collide with what the world would want at that moment.
Steve Jobs, at the beginning of the 2000. And we were talking and joking. He told me, Bernard, I don't know if in 50 years my iPhone will still be a success, but I can tell you, I'm sure everybody will still drink your Dom Pérignon. The question next usually is, who is going to succeed you?
I wouldn't be giving him his Lifetime Achievement Award yet. I would wait a while longer because I think there's still more chapters.
LVMH Prize is oriented to find the most talented young designer.
I think if you look at the success of the LVMH Fashion Prize, which was started by his daughter Delphine a number of years ago, I think he really started that as a garden, if you like, to discover new talent. That was a genius idea.
You have to apply on the internet. You have to have less than 35 years of age, and you have to have already presented 2 shows. And we were astonished at the beginning with the number of applicants. And we select 10 among these thousands of applicants, and then the 10 are in fact meeting here with their project. And these projects are submitted to some of the best experienced designers, like Karl Lagerfeld, Nicolas Ghesquière.
Certainly, Delphine and Bernard will ask me what I think, but in the end, the decision about who the winners will be are made by a team of LVMH designers, starting with Karl Lagerfeld. So I think they're certainly far more qualified than I would be to pick a winner.
This year there will be changes because some people left, other people came, because there are many musical chairs in the fashion world, except me.
And it's always very interesting to see these young designers showing their products and defending their ideas, their creative ideas.
He's become a great benefactor and philanthropist. And of course, Foundation Louis Vuitton and the museum is just one example of it, just the most famous example at the moment.
We started to do some philanthropic work for the group in the beginning of the 90s, and I immediately thought of building something that was more a mark of what the group is doing. And then, at the end of the 90s, beginning of 2000, I met Frank.
My first encounter with this museum is he and his wife brought me to the Jardin d'Acclimatation. And when I realized where he was bringing me, it brought tears to my eyes because I felt like Proust was here.
A few months later, he sent me a sketch of his first vision. And it's not very different from what it is today. I thought it's extremely creative, and I asked for him to give me more details.
So we designed a museum that's solid walls, and then we enclosed that in another envelope of glass. And the glass was not to enclose interior, it was just like sails. And I talked about it like a sailboat, like a regatta of sails.
So we started to build, and then we had to stop, and then to restart building. And all in all, it took me 10 years.
Today I looked at it and felt very proud to be part of this place.
The foundation was a great gift on behalf of Bernard Arnault and his family to Paris.
When you think of cultural institutions in Paris, it's been a long time since a new one was built. And I think it was a shot of vitality in the city of Paris.
He sparks ideas. He says, what if? Or, oh, but Franck, what could we do? Could we have a small concert hall? Or, you know, he says things just very softly. But I know when he says it, he means it. And I go for it. And then we have fun trying to make it happen. I can't say how much I love working with him.
He's a dreamer. He dreams big dreams. And then he has the guts to go after those dreams. Sometimes I try to tell him the dream's too big, but of course he's always right. The dreams are never big enough.
He does not compromise on quality. He doesn't compromise on the quality of execution. He doesn't compromise on commitment. And I think that's really a big part of his recipe.
They imagine him in his big tower with his huge Excel sheets with numbers. It's very, very far from reality. It's not as serious as some might think up there.
No, I try to keep calm. Maybe people around are more nervous than I am. Yes. I try to calm them also.
In terms of where we are in the life of Bernard Arnault and LVMH, he's got a lot of runway ahead of him. And he thinks young and he thinks current. I wouldn't be giving him his Lifetime Achievement Award yet. I would wait a while longer because I think there's still more chapters.
He has no interest in standing still. He has no interest in repeating himself. He has no interest in anything remaining the same. He is a man that is intrigued by what can happen, not by what has happened.
I admire him. I like to be with him. I like to be with his family, and that's all I can say.
He continues to, arrive at the office early in the morning, to leave often almost the last one in the evening, and he just enjoys it. He likes managing people, taking decisions, important ones, difficult ones sometimes.
Because the question next usually is who is going to succeed you? But the question for me is the best in terms of management capacity will be chosen in the future, not because he is a member of the family, but as I said, the group as a whole is a family, and so we will choose in the family who is the best. But I think I will be there for some years.
10 advice from Bill Gates to young people who want to be rich. He became a billionaire in 1987 at the age of 31 and the richest man in the world at the age of 39. Bill Gates has since then remained one of the richest people in the world. Kind of him, he has given various advice to young people over the years on how they can become rich and successful. In this video, we want to share with you 10 of the most inspiring advice Bill Gates has given, and we hope some of his advice change your life. Number 7 is our favorite advice, and we need you to see it. So try and watch this video till the end. And if you're new here, consider subscribing so that you won't miss other educative videos like this. Let's get started. Advice number 1. Don't compare yourself with anyone in this world. If you do so, you are insulting yourself. Abraham Lincoln once wrote to the teacher of his child to make a request. It was a simple one. Teach him that nobody in the world is bigger than him and is bigger than no one. Unfortunately, most young people in our world today live their lives comparing themselves to every other person and end up trying to be everyone. That's the path to unhappiness and failure in life. Listen, you are a unique being who is not designed to be good in everything, but in something unique. Your life's mission isn't to beat other people in their games. Your life's mission is to know your own game. Be yourself. Know that nobody is better than you and you're better than no one. You're simply a unique being who is capable of achieving what nobody else can. Advice number 2. To win big, you sometimes have to take big risk. The best time of your life to dare life is when you're young because you have nothing to lose. Really nothing. Don't take life easy. Don't live like everyone. Don't just talk about your dreams. Wake up and pursue it. Don't make excuses. Start with whatever you have, wherever you are. Get out and get lost. Advice number 3. Your exposure from a young age to the realities of the world is a super big thing. Most people don't know what life really is until they are 40. Most people live with the illusion that life is or should be easy. Most people expect the government or their parents to solve their problems. The earlier you understand the realities of life, the more successful you'll become. What then is the reality? Well, the reality is that life is tough and nobody will help you to solve your problems. We are sorry, your parents or government cannot help you. The earlier you take 100% responsibility of your life, the more successful you'll become. Number 4. You need a coach. It doesn't matter whether you're a basketball player, a tennis player, a gymnast, or a bridge player. In life, you'll become the person you admire. If you don't admire anyone significant, you'll become nobody significant. You need a coach, someone to inspire and challenge you, someone to help you believe in yourself. Your coach doesn't always have to be someone you have physical access to. You can decide to read books written by people who have achieved what you want to achieve. You can follow such people online and watch their inspiring videos. But why is this important? Simple. Because life is tough and most people around you don't know anything about success. If your father isn't successful, he can't teach you how to be successful. If your siblings are mediocre, they can't inspire you to be successful. That's why you need to look outside your domain for someone who can inspire and challenge you. Number 5. If you show people the problems and you show people the solutions, they will be moved to act. To be successful in life, you must be able to lead people and to get them motivated towards a common goal. To motivate people into actions, you have to show them what the problem is and what can be done to create a solution. As a leader, don't just give instructions. Let people know the reason why what has to be done needs to be done. Number 6. Success is a lousy teacher. It can seduce you into thinking you can't lose. If you want to be successful for a long time, you have to be humble. So many people have been successful for few minutes because they got to a point where they started thinking that they know it all. People who are successful for a long time never stop learning because they know that they can lose if they don't keep on learning. That leads us to the next advice. Number 7. I spend a lot of time reading. Even as one of the richest men in the world for over 3 decades, Bill Gates still remains a voracious reader because he understands that life changes every day and the only way to remain relevant is to keep on learning. In this day of social media and interesting movies, how many young people take time to read good books anymore? Yet, the books you read determine the future you will have. Just as Charlie Jones said, you will be the same person in 5 years as you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. Number 8. We start life with many big dreams, things we want to accomplish, create, build, and experience. But if you ask anyone past the age of 40 what happened to all the dreams they had, they will most likely answer life. According to a study, out of 60 people who are planning to start their own businesses right now, only one of them will ever start anything. Not only business, people generally hate the pains of taking action. So much that even when they try to take action, the first failure or second send them back to their comfort zone. Most people are dreamers because dream is sweet. You can't be healthy for long if you only eat sweet things. Dreams are sweet and everyone eats it. Action is bitter, and that's why only few people take proactive, determined, and persistent actions. Be among the few who get up from their dreams. Get out and get crazy. Number 9. Our success has really been based on partnerships from the very beginning. The first big success of Microsoft happened in the year 1980 when Bill Gates partnered with the IBM, and ever since then, Bill Gates has always been on the lookout to whom he can partner with. His passion for partnership was so strong that Microsoft even went to the extent of partnering with one of their biggest competitors, Apple Computer. What can you learn from this? 2 are better than 1. You'll grow and succeed faster in life if you learn how to work with other people. Number 10. Your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning. This explains itself. Your unhappy clients and customers give you feedbacks about what needs to be corrected in your products or services. In summary, if you want to be rich and successful in life, don't compare yourself with anyone. Never allow your dreams to die. Be strong and take risk. Be humble. Read good books and learn how to work and partner with other people. You enjoyed this video, didn't you? We would like to give you another interesting video for you to enjoy next. But before then, our team will be very happy if you can like this video and share it with your friends on social media. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss other interesting videos like this. Look at your screen now to see 2 other videos we have picked for you to enjoy next. We love you.
You guys will find that you have passions, and having a passion is a gift. I think we all have passions, and you don't get to choose them. They pick you, but you have to be alert to them. You have to be looking for them. And when you find your passion, it's a fantastic gift for you because it gives you direction, it gives you purpose. You can have a job, or you can have a career, or you can have a calling. And the best thing is to have a calling. And if you find your passion, you'll have that, and all your work won't feel like work to you. Many kids and many grown-ups do figure out over time what their passions are. And sometimes we let I don't think it's that hard. I think what happens though sometimes is that we let our intellectual selves overrule those passions. And so that's what needs to be guarded against. One of my jobs as the leader of Amazon is to encourage people to be bold. And people love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good, it's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets. And you need to encourage that. And if you're gonna take bold bets, they're gonna be experiments. And if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time whether they're gonna work. Experiments are by their very nature prone to failure. But a few big successes compensate for dozens and dozens of things that didn't work. So, bold bets, AWS, Kindle, Amazon Prime, our third-party seller business, all of those things are examples of bold bets that did work, and they pay for a lot of experiments. I've made billions of dollars of failures at Amazon.com, literally billions of dollars of failures. And you might remember Pets.com or Cosmo, or give myself a root canal with no anesthesia very easily. None of those things are fun, but they don't matter. What really matters is companies that don't continue to experiment, companies that don't embrace failure, they eventually get in a desperate position where the only thing they can do is make a kind of Hail Mary bet at the very end of their corporate existence. Whereas companies that are, making bets all along, even, big bets, but not bet the company bets. I don't believe in bet the company bets. That's when you're desperate. That's the last thing you can do. You could be out of work and have terrible work-life balance. Even though you've got all the time in the world, you could just feel like, oh my God, I'm miserable, and you would be draining energy. And so you have to find that harmony. It's a much better word. And I think for most people, it's about meaning. People want to know that they're doing something interesting and useful. And for us, because of the challenges that we have chosen for ourselves, we get to work in the future, and it's super fun to work in the future for the right kind of person. You need to be nimble and robust. So you need to be able to take a punch, and you also need to be quick and innovative and doing new things at a high speed. That's the best defense against the future. And you have to always be leaning into the future. If you're leaning away from the future is going to win every time. Never, ever, ever lean away from the future. We all have adversity in our lives. I doubt if you really, if you know somebody, any friend or anybody that you talk to, there's no lack of adversity. And by the way, that's good, because it's what teaches us how to get back up. You fall down, you get back up. It always happens. And you get certain gifts in life, and you want to take advantage of those. But I guess my advice on adversity and success would be to be proud not of your gifts, but of your hard work and your choices. So you may be the kinds of gifts you get in life. You might be really good at math. It might be really easy for you. That's a kind of gift. But practicing that math and taking it to the next step, that could be very challenging and hard, and take a lot of sweat. That's a choice. You can't really be proud of your gifts because they were given to you. You can be grateful for them and thankful for them. But your choices, you choose to work hard. You choose to do hard things. Those are choices that you can be proud of. Being an inventor requires, because the world is so complicated, you have to be a domain expert. I mean, in a way, even if you're not at the beginning, you have to learn enough so that you become a domain expert. But the danger is, once you've become a domain expert, you can be trapped by that knowledge. And so inventors have this paradoxical ability to have that 10,000 hours of practice and be a real domain expert, and have that beginner's mind. Have that look at it freshly, even though they know so much about the domain. And that's the key to inventing. You have to have both. And I think that is intentional. I think all of us have that inside of us, and we can all do it, but you have to be intentional about it. You have to say, yeah, I am going to become an expert, and I'm going to keep my beginner's mind.
You can't skip steps. You have to put one foot in front of the other. Things take time. There are no shortcuts. And but you want to do those steps with, passion and ferocity.
It's easy to have ideas. It's very hard to turn an idea into a successful product. There are a lot of steps in between, and it takes persistence, relentlessness. So I always tell people who are, who think they want to be entrepreneurs, you need a combination of stubborn relentlessness and flexibility. And you have to know when to be which. And basically you need to be stubborn on your vision, because otherwise it'll be too easy to give up. But you need to be very flexible on the details, because as you go along pursuing your vision, you'll find that some of your preconceptions were wrong, and you're going to need to be able to change those things. So I think taking an idea successfully all the way to the market and turning it into a real product that people care about and that really improves people's lives is a lot of hard work.
Don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day. I think we actually saw this, I think you see it all over the place in many different contexts, but I think we saw it in the internet world quite a bit, where at the sort of peak of the sort of internet mania in, say, 1999, you found people who were very passionate about something. They kind of left that job and decided, I'm going to do something in the internet, because it's it was almost like the the 1849 gold rush in a way. I mean, you find that people, if you go back and study the history of the 1849 gold rush, you find that at that time, everybody who was within shouting distance of California was, they might have been a doctor, but they quit being a doctor and they started panning for gold. And that almost never works. And even if it does work, according to some metric, financial success or whatever it might be, I suspect it leaves you ultimately unsatisfied. So you really need to be very clear with yourself. And I think one of the best ways to do that is this notion of projecting yourself forward to age 80, looking back on your life and trying to make sure you've minimized the number of regrets you have. That works for career decisions, it works for family decisions. Do you want, I have a 14-month-old son, and it's very easy for me to, if I think about myself when I'm 80, I know I want to watch that little guy grow up. And so I don't want to be 80 and think, shoot, I missed that whole thing and I don't have the kind of relationship with my son that I wished I had, and so on and so on. So if you think about that, so I guess another thing that I would recommend to people is that they always take a long-term point of view. And I think this is something about which there's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of people, and I'm just not one of them, believe that you should live for the now. I think what you do is you think about the great expanse of time ahead of you and try to make sure that you're planning for that in a way that's going to leave you ultimately satisfied. So this is just this is the way it works for me. And I mean, everybody needs to find that for themselves. So I think there are a lot of paths to satisfaction, and you need to find one that works for you.
Hello A-Luxers, and welcome back to another amazing video. Welcome to alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. Hello A-Luxers, and welcome back to another amazing video. This time we're taking a look into the life of one of the biggest retail giants in the world, Amancio Ortega. Spanish business tycoon Amancio Ortega is the founder of Inditex Fashion, the group that owns Zara, Massimo Dutti, Pull & Bear, and many more. He has an unbelievable net worth of $72.8 billion, which makes him the second richest person in the world and the richest in Europe. He may be 80 years old, but he's still directly involved in the running of all of his Inditex brands and continues to dominate the European fashion industry. Alux.com is dedicated to becoming the world's best resource on the most influential business people and entrepreneurs in the world. It would be just wrong if we missed out on the richest man in Europe. Here are 15 things you didn't know about Amancio Ortega. Number 1. He left school at 14 and went to work for a shirt maker. Ortega's family were far from wealthy, which led him to having to leave school at 14 years old because his father's railway worker salary wasn't enough to keep him there. He went on to work for a shirt maker, where he learned to sew shirts by hand. His parents' poverty proved to be his introduction to the business of fashion. Number 2. He didn't start his first business until he was 37. The Spaniard had a relatively late start in business, establishing his first when he was 37 years old. His first business was called Confecciones Goa, and he specialized in quilted bathrobes produced by local women in different sewing cooperatives. He and his wife would make the garments by hand in their living room before they could afford to hire a team of seamstresses. Number 3. His first Zara store was called Zorba, but he had to change the name. The first Zara store was opened in 1975 under the name Zorba, but a restaurant a couple of streets away had taken the name already. Ortega and his then-wife Rosalia Mera changed the name to Zara to avoid any confusion. Within 8 years, Zara had opened in 9 separate locations. Number 4. He has a uniform that he wears every single day. Just like Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, Amancio doesn't like to complicate his life with lots of different shirts and jackets, so he wears the same thing every day. His blue blazer, white shirt, and gray trousers have become his trademark, and he can be seen in the Inditex headquarters wearing just that each and every day. Surprisingly, you won't see him in Zara Man anytime soon. Number 5. He eats lunch with his staff in the office cafeteria every day. He might be the richest man in Europe, but he's still known for his humble lifestyle. According to a report in The Telegraph, his life has remained fairly similar to how it was before he secured his astronomical wealth. He still goes into the office every day, has lunch with his colleagues in the cafeteria, and shares desks with designers, buyers, and fabric buyers. In his downtime, he raises chickens on his rural country estate. Yes, really. Number 6. Zara can develop a garment and get it into a store in 2 to 3 weeks. Zara is arguably the biggest high street fashion brand in the world, partly because of its unbeatable fashion product logistics. Conception to design and delivery to store can take just 3 weeks, so the brand is always up to date and changing its stock. The majority of their garments are made in Spain, close to their headquarters, and they take customer feedback into account to constantly develop their designs. In comparison, it can take H&M 5 months to launch one item. Number 7. Ortega hardly spends any money on advertising his brands. Zara doesn't have an advertising budget because the big boss doesn't believe it's necessary. Its marketing department is particularly thin on the ground, too. There are no flashy campaigns, no billboards, and no TV adverts, unlike a lot of their rivals. They manage to be at the top of their game by delivering fast fashion, so that's what the brand focuses on. Number 8. Zara's store positions are very deliberate and calculated. Ortega might not prioritize advertising, but real estate is a major focus of his. He deliberately chooses sites for Zara stores that are close to luxury brands such as Prada, Gucci, and even the most high-end luxury brands like Cartier and Hermes. The logic behind this is to get close to these luxury brands in terms of footfall and to attract the same customers. Their New York flagship store became the most expensive retail site ever sold in Manhattan. If you need to get your luxury fashion fix, find out more about one of Italy's biggest high fashion labels in our video about Versace. Number 9. In 2015, Ortega officially overtook Bill Gates as the second richest man in the world for about a day. In 2016, Amancio Ortega briefly became the richest man in the world, overtaking Microsoft founder and philanthropist Bill Gates. By the next morning, though, Gates had reclaimed his place, overtaking the Spanish businessman by a relatively paltry $0.3 billion. Ortega is a simple man with a simple life, so we doubt he's too worried about his place on the rich list. Number 10. His management style is partly influenced by his lack of formal education. Former colleagues have spoken out about Ortega's unique management style and how he likes to do things. He prefers oral communication over written, likes discussing things in small groups, delegating paperwork to his staff, and listening rather than writing things down. He rarely speaks in public, is notoriously introverted, and even shies away from his staff singing happy birthday to him. Number 11. He lives in a discreet apartment building overlooking the sea. Ortega married his second wife in 2001, and they share an apartment in La Coruña in Galicia, Spain. He opened his very first Zara store in this town, and their headquarters are still close by. His home reflects his humility and privacy, as it's far from opulent and quite modest. His children are definitely set to get some pretty incredible inheritances, because this man clearly doesn't like to flash the cash. Number 12. He pays for 500 Spanish students to go to college in America and Canada every year. Amancio's philanthropy is less bold and high-profile than his contemporaries, but just as worthwhile. He pays for 500 students' tuition, perhaps to right the wrongs of his own lack of education. He also helps to fund various Catholic charities. In particular, he gave €20 million to Caritas Internationales, a charity that provides global relief. Number 13. He bought the former tallest skyscraper in Spain for $536 million. The 515 Torre Picasso Tower in Madrid was bought by Ortega. Construction was finished in 1988 as a part of Madrid's expansion plan, and it had 43 floors of office space. It was the tallest building until 2007, but Ortega clearly saw the potential in it regardless. Number 14. Ortega owns a complex in Miami that includes a hotel and luxury apartments. One of the most luxurious hotels in the U.S., Epic Residences and Hotel, is a complex right on the water in Miami. With a choice of penthouses and suites, as well as state-of-the-art security and a 24-hour valet service, it's the hotel of choice for Miami's visiting elite. No doubt Ortega is offered the best room in the place when he decides to visit. Whether he'd accept special treatment, though, is another matter. Number 15. He owns a private jet worth $45 million. One of Amancio Ortega's more lavish purchases is a Bombardier Global Express BD-700 private jet. It's one of the finest corporate jets in the world, with a comfortable interior and 14,750 pounds of thrust. Its top speed is Mach 0.86 and can seat 18 passengers and 4 crew. Amancio Ortega is unlike many business people. He wears the same clothes, he doesn't share his latest extravagant purchases on Instagram, and he's had no formal education. What he does have, though, is an incredible business model that has dominated the high street fashion industry and given new meaning to fast fashion. If you had to build a business like Intedex, would you share Ortega's management style? Or would you not be able to help yourself and be desperate to rock up to the office in a Bentley? Oh, you're still here? Well, here's something else you probably didn't know about Amancio Ortega. His biographer, Cavadonga O'Shea, revealed that his mother was shamed by a shopkeeper when she was refused credit at his grocery store. She couldn't buy groceries for the family because she didn't have enough money. This moment has been attributed to why Ortega has so much humility when it comes to wealth. He knows what it's like to have nothing. Thank you for spending some time with us, A-Luxer. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. If you want more, we handpicked these videos you might enjoy, or head over to alux.com for the best in fine living content on the planet. Be a part of the largest community of luxury enthusiasts in the world and tell your story.
Warren Buffett, throughout his investing career, has achieved an annual average return of 20.9% compared to the market's average return of 9.9%. Now, this may not sound like much, but if you take into account compound interest, Buffett's cumulative return was 2,404,748% compared to the market's 15,508%. This is all because of compound interest. And I won't be explaining compound interest in this video. What I will be talking about is Warren Buffett's current portfolio. We'll look at some of the stocks that made him rich and the stocks that he has picked to make him rich in the future. So let's just get straight on to Warren Buffett's largest position that he has in any stock, and that is Apple. Remember, this is the portfolio of the investing company that Warren Buffett manages, called Berkshire Hathaway. Apple makes up 23.77% of Berkshire's portfolio, and they own $47 billion worth of Apple stock. Now, I hope that you guys have heard of Apple before. Their products, they're found around the world, and arguably they are the most famous brand in the world. They're obviously the company that makes phones, but they don't just do this. They make laptops, watches, iPads. They have a service called iTunes. They make money through a range of key areas. But the main way they make money is through their iPhone sales. Now the question becomes, why did Warren Buffett make the decision to have Apple as his largest position by far in his stock portfolio? And Buffett has talked about why he loves Apple stock before. First, it's because of the amazing product that Apple deliver and the following that they have with their products. Consumers are hooked on Apple devices and they're willing to pay a lot more for an Apple device compared to a device from another brand. And that all comes down to the quality of product and brand name. Buffett calls this Apple's competitive advantage or moat. Second would be the price. When Buffett bought Apple, they were selling at a great price compared to the value of the business. And even today, they're selling for a decent price. Their PE ratio is just 17. It's not as good as what it was when Buffett bought it, but the price is still nice. The second biggest stock in Buffett's portfolio is the largest bank in America, called Bank of America. So Bank of America makes up 12.39% of Buffett's overall portfolio, and the total value of this position is $24.7 billion. Bank of America, I don't really need to go into too much detail with this company. It's pretty obvious what they do. They do the typical things that most banks do: commercial banking, wealth management for individuals, investment banking, risk management, etc. Warren Buffett has been buying Bank of America stock for a good amount of time now. He bought back in 2011 when the bank was struggling after the financial crisis. But even to this day, Warren Buffett has been buying more Bank of America shares. And the main reason behind this is the price. Bank of America is just selling for a really good price at the moment and over the past couple of years. BAC at the time of making this video is selling for a price that is just under $30, and it's bringing in earnings of $2.80 per share. This gives it a PE ratio of just 10.5. which is ridiculously low compared to most stocks. On top of this, BAC pay a nice dividend of 72 cents, which gives it a yield of 2.44%. And this was one of the main reasons why Buffett bought into Bank of America, and that's for its extremely cheap price tag. Wells Fargo, a very similar position to that of Bank of America, comes in as Buffett's third biggest stock at 9.93% of his overall portfolio. Wells Fargo is a provider of banking, mortgage, investing, credit card, and financial services company. I also do not want to talk too much about the stock because the reason why Buffett bought into the stock is very similar to why he owns the Bank of America. He just bought it at a cheap price. Wells Fargo, on a pure earnings to price basis, is actually cheaper than that of Bank of America. If you look at its PE ratio, it's actually under 10, which is very low. Buffett actually owns a couple more bank stocks in his portfolio, and the main reason behind this is a cheap price compared to the value of the company. If you want to learn more about value in a company, it's one of the things that I teach in my How to Invest course. Link, of course, to that is in the description. Let's move on though. One of Warren Buffett's greatest stock buys to this day is the stock Coca-Cola, and Buffett has said this, that he will never sell a share of Coca-Cola in his lifetime. So Warren Buffett bought Coca-Cola back in 1989, and to be honest, I have no idea how he managed to time this investment so well, but pretty much since he bought Coca-Cola, the stock has shot up like a rocket. I remember reading in a book about Warren Buffett about one of the reasons why he bought into Coca-Cola stock. This book may have been called The Snowball Effect, I believe. I can't really remember. Anyway, Buffett talked about how he used to collect soda lids as a kid. One of the things that he noticed was he was collecting way more Coca-Cola lids than any other soft drink. And this is just because consumers absolutely love the taste of Coca-Cola. There's just something about that flavor and that fizz that makes it the most popular drink in the world. Warren Buffett knew this was a major advantage that Coke had over other companies, and it's a big reason why he owns so much Coke stock. To this day, it's his fourth largest position at Berkshire Hathaway and makes up 9.4% of his overall portfolio. The value of his position is $18.7 billion. Funny fact, Buffett originally paid $2.50 for his Coke stock. Now the dividend for Coke is $1.56 per year. So his dividend now almost pays off his entire stock purchase price every year. One of the things that I talked about in my previous video is with investing, you want to pick an area that you are good at and then master all of those stocks in that area. One area that Buffett is good at is the banking and financial services area. This brings me on to Buffett's fifth largest position, which is American Express. American Express is a financial services company. These guys mainly do charge and credit card products as well as travel related services around the world. Now, it's quite funny the way Buffett has been buying into American Express. Basically, whenever American Express is in times of trouble, that's when Buffett the hero comes and buys some of their stock. He did this in 1963 when they needed capital, and in the 2008 financial crisis. Buffett is always greedy when everyone else is fearful, and this is one way he buys stocks for huge discounts. Bit of a unfortunate stock that Buffett has owned lately, which is Kraft Heinz, coming in at 5.33% of his portfolio, with Buffett's total position in Kraft being worth $10.6 billion. Now, cents, making it one of the more higher paying dividend stocks in the USA market. The next four stocks I want to loop together because they're all banking and financial services stocks. I've already explained why Buffett has exposed his portfolio heavily to bank stocks. One reason being because he understands them very well. This is one of his competitive advantages as an investor, understanding this particular sector. Also, a lot of these stocks in the sector have been selling for very attractive prices as of late. And this is why Buffett has been snapping up a lot of bank stocks over the past year or two. Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway has 3.1% of their portfolio in US Bancorp, 3% in JP Morgan, 2.2% in Moody's, and 2.05% in the Bank of New York Mellon. So, now I just want to quickly go over the next 4 largest positions in Buffett's portfolio, and the rest of the stocks in the portfolio we'll leave out because they're all pretty small positions, and to be honest, I don't want to overload you with information. Let's just stick to the key stocks in Buffett's portfolio. Delta Airlines is Buffett's 11th largest stock position, coming in at 1.8% of his portfolio at Berkshire. I remember back in the day Buffett said he would never invest in the airline industry. But as of recent times, Buffett has changed his mind, and now he owns a couple of airline stocks. The reason why he owns airlines now is because there's not many of them out there. There's only about 4 main airlines in the USA, so they have an oligopoly in the airline market. Also, airline stocks have been selling for attractive prices recently. For example, Delta sells for a PE of only 8.9. Stock 12 is Goldman Sachs at 1.8% of Berkshire's portfolio, and I've already explained why Buffett owns so many banking stocks. Let's not get more into it. Stock 13 is another airline company called Southwest, and yes, I also just explained why Buffett owns airlines. Southwest comes in at 1.4% of Buffett's portfolio. And the 14th biggest position Buffett is using to expose himself a little to the vehicle manufacturing industry. He's doing this through the stock General Motors, which he bought in early 2012. But he even recently has been buying more of the stock. In the fourth quarter of 2018, Buffett increased his General Motors position by 37% in that last quarter. And those are 14 of Buffett's biggest stock positions as of 2019. The rest of the stocks in Buffett's portfolio are quite small positions, but I gotta say, there are some noticeable mentions in there. Berkshire has a position in Amazon, which they bought recently. They own Visa, they own MasterCard, they own Costco, a stock which made Charlie Munger quite wealthy. They own SiriusXM and Johnson & Johnson. But these stocks are very small positions in Buffett's overall portfolio, all under 1%. And you know, Buffett has bought all of these stocks with a very unique process. He looks at certain ratios in a stock. For example, a low PE ratio. He asks the question if management is top of the line. He looks at the moats of the business. He looks at the value of the business, and a bunch more things. If you do want to learn more about that, there is a link to my course on how to invest like Warren Buffett, in the description. But my thoughts have always been this: the best investors legally have to disclose the stocks that they invest in. So why not take advantage of this? Look at the stocks that they're buying, analyze the stocks that they own, and then make the decision if you want to own them too. Let's be honest, it's just a smarter way to invest.
Visit our website startupstories.in for more inspirational stories and updates from the startup world.
I was 21 years old when I dropped out of college, packed everything I owned, jeans, t-shirts, leather jacket, guitar, into my car, and drove from Chicago to Berkeley, California. During my California springs and summers, I spent most of my days in the high Sierras in Yosemite Valley, working as a river guide and a rock climbing instructor. I loved those jobs, but unfortunately they didn't pay that well. So I also got a job working a couple of days a week as a computer programmer back in Berkeley. I had learned to program in college. I didn't love programming, but it was fun and I was good at it. And computer programming gave me the same kind of satisfaction as solving math problems and playing chess, both things I enjoyed before I became a confused teenager. At this point in my life, I thought I was making real progress on my journey of self-discovery. I had found a cause. I had a couple of jobs that I loved, and one that was fun and paid the bills. I was pretty happy with my life. My wife was not. What she saw was a college dropout who spent too much time in the mountains doing foolish things. She wanted me to work full-time as a computer programmer, or go back to college and finish my degree. I started taking classes at UC Berkeley. I took several classes, but the only one I can remember was a sailing class taught at Berkeley Marina. Once again, I fell in love and began a lifelong affair with the limitless, omnipotent Pacific Ocean. When my class was over, I wanted to buy a sailboat. My wife said this was the single stupidest idea she had ever heard in her entire life. She accused me of being irresponsible, and she told me I lacked ambition. She kicked me out, and then she divorced me. This was a pivotal moment in my life. But this time, I was not disappointed in myself. Their dreams and my dreams were different. I would never confuse the two of them again. I searched and I searched, but I just could not find a software engineering job that I loved as much as I loved sailing. So I tried to create one. I put together a plan to start my own company. That way I could completely control my work environment. My goal was to create the perfect job for me, a job I truly loved. Hired the most talented software engineers in Silicon Valley. We assembled an all-star team of gifted programmers who were among the best in the world at what they did. That team, plus one crazy idea, gave birth to a giant company. I call it a crazy idea because at the time, everyone told me it was a crazy idea. And when you start telling people that all the experts are wrong, at first they call you arrogant, and then they say you're crazy. When people start telling you that you're crazy, you just might be onto the most important innovation in your life. The idea was to build the world's first relational database, and IBM was building a prototype in their research labs. But back then, the collective wisdom of computer experts, while relational databases could be built, they would never be fast enough to be useful. This is one of those times when the experts were wrong. Arrogance and insanity turned out to be innovation in disguise. As the information age moved from dawn to the full light of day, technology horizons were constantly shifting, revealing a brave and exciting world of new possibilities and new opportunities. Oracle doubled in size year after year after year for 10 years. I had set out to create the perfect programming job for me. Instead, I created a job where I had to stop programming altogether. I attempted to create an environment that I could completely control. Instead, I was running a company with thousands and thousands of people that was growing so fast that it was impossible for anyone to control. In a constantly changing world, what is possible is a moving target. Don't be afraid to experiment and try lots of different things. And don't let the experts discourage you when you challenge the status quo. Each of you has a chance to discover who you are rather than who you should be. A chance to live your dreams, not the dreams of others. Each of you has an obligation to commit to a righteous cause, one that elevates you and improves the conditions of humanity and the planet. Until you find a job that ignites your passions, like I did. Even better, you just might find one that you love. Oracle's a very competitive company, and I think there are a lot of competitive people at Oracle, and I enjoy competition.
Don't simply conform to conventional ways of thinking.
Translating a good idea into a great product is unbelievably hard. We probably spend less money in marketing than any company our size in the world.
We would reach $1 billion in revenue, and we were having serious management problems all over the place.
Our goal was to get to 50 employees, and the goal really was not so much to make a lot of money.
My sister once said to me that whenever I got too close to one of my goals, I immediately moved the goalposts further away.
So your question was, are we a loser? No.
If you do everything everyone else does in business, you're going to lose.
What do you think? What do you think Google runs on?
I'll ask you
What do you think they run on water vapor?
He's an American entrepreneur, businessman, and philanthropist. He serves as the executive chairman and chief technology officer of Oracle. As of April 2016, Forbes estimated his net worth to be $50.2 billion. He's Larry Ellison, and here are his top 10 rules for success.
Oracle's a very competitive company, and I think there are a lot of competitive people at Oracle, and I enjoy competition. I think life is kind of a series of acts of discovery. And I think we're all interested in our limits, what we can accomplish in life, and discovering our own limits. And we might find that in sport, we might find that in business. I think we're always, looking to discover new things, and new things about each other and new things about ourselves. Think things out for yourself. Come to your own judgments. Don't simply conform to conventional ways of thinking, conventional ways of dressing, conventional ways of acting. That a lot of things are based on fashion. Even morality at times is based on fashion. It was once slavery was once not considered not to be immoral. People are shocked that the ancient Greeks had slaves, that we had slavery in this country as recently as 130, 140 years ago. So there are moral facts. You have to really go back to first principles and think things out for yourself, whether they're scientific principles or moral principles or business ideas or product ideas. You have to think things out for yourself. Ideas, there are a lot of good ideas.
There are a lot of good ideas in this room.
There are a lot of good ideas. Translating a good idea into a great product is unbelievably hard. There are so many details. People accuse Steve of stealing, the Macintosh from Xerox, with the Alto computer. I was at Xerox PARC, so I used the Alto a lot. Finishing the Alto and turning that into the Macintosh was enormously complicated, and there were so many things that had to be done that Xerox had not done. There were a few good ideas in the Xerox machine, but Steve would translate good ideas, not always his good ideas, but he would translate good ideas into finished product, unlike anyone in our industry. Henry Ford didn't invent the car, but he made it cheap, and he made it popular, and he made it accessible to the American people. Steve would translate good ideas into finished, brilliant products. We probably spend less money in marketing than any company our size in the world. We have a tiny marketing department, and everyone says, well, Oracle's all about sales and marketing. We are the largest employer of MIT and Caltech engineers in the world. We are the largest employer of Stanford and Harvard and CMU mathematicians in the world. We are overwhelmingly dominated by engineering at Oracle. The idea that we are a sales and marketing company, which people will sometimes write about quite often, is ludicrous on the face of it, because all of our customers who buy Oracle already have it. And if you already have Oracle, there's nothing a salesman can tell you about how great it is to make you buy more. GE already uses it. The Defense Department already uses it. All of our customers, 98% of our sales or more, are to existing Oracle customers. If we don't have the right product, people don't buy more. Before the acquisition, we spent $3 billion a year in software engineering. The company is all about engineering. It's the only thing that works. Suddenly, we'd hit a wall. We would reach $1 billion in revenue, and we were having serious management problems all over the place. And the people who were running the company, the $1 billion company, were the same people that had run the company when we were a $50 million company, 1/20th the size. And I had an incredible sense of loyalty to those people who'd worked with me to build Oracle. And it was a very painful realization in 1990 that I was going to have to change the management team, that the company had outgrown the management, that people who are good at running a $50 million company are not necessarily, those are the same skills. They're just different. Not one is better or worse. They're just entirely different skill set in running a $50 million company than a $1 billion company. And both skill sets are rare and precious. But we needed a different group of managers, and virtually the entire management team had to be replaced. And that means I had to ask people who I'd worked with for a decade to leave. I had to fire people. And that was the most difficult thing I had to do in business, asking a bunch of people to leave Oracle.
Our goal was we started with 4 employees, and our goal was to get to 50 employees. And the goal really was not so much to make a lot of money. I wanted, to me, a lot of money in those days was I wanted to own a house, I wanted to have a nice car, and I wanted to work with interesting people and do interesting things. And I thought if I could control my own environment, have a small consulting company. And Oracle started out as a software consulting company. We worked for Tandem Computer, if anyone remembers those guys. We worked for IBM. We worked for a lot of different tech companies in Silicon Valley doing contract programming, fixed price contract programming. And we did pretty well, actually. And again, the idea was just to have a small contract software company. We thought we were hotshot programmers, and we thought we could make a decent living doing just that. And quite by accident, we built a product.
My sister once said to me that whenever I got too close to one of my goals, I immediately moved the goalposts further away. And I think in business, you can always do more.
Hi, Rolf Winkler from the Wall Street Journal. I had a question about your apps business. I guess you've built a phenomenon, it generates phenomenal cash flows, and a lot of people, it's done so a lot by locking in customers to older software and raising maintenance fees a lot year after year.
That's not true. Wait, let me just stop you. We do not raise maintenance fees a lot year after year after year. People buy more software and they pay the same maintenance fees that they always pay.
I guess the point Mark Andreessen, for instance, has famously said that none of the startups that work with Andreessen Horowitz run Oracle. And I guess I'm wondering, over time,
well, I know. We just have to rely on General Electric and AT&T and Verizon.
I'm saying if the next generation of companies isn't running Oracle.
Which of the Andreessen Horowitz companies have we lost? Well, anyway, they run on that. By the way, they run on
generation of large companies isn't going to run Oracle. Does that end up causing your business to shrink dramatically over time?
Well, again, no, our business isn't shrinking. It's growing, and it's growing rapidly. And we have all of our applications in the cloud starting June 6th. It took us 6-7 years to rewrite all this stuff for the cloud. Okay. Our major competitor, SAP, didn't do that. So if you look at the market in total, you have 2 very large companies, SAP and Oracle, in applications, and then a bunch of smaller
Salesforce and Workday. What about those guys?
Well, it's going to be very interesting to monitor Workday. We compete with Workday all the time, and we beat Workday all the time. So in the cloud, our Fusion HCM has been out for a while. Again, these are much smaller companies, but we are fully in the cloud come June 6th with a fully integrated suite. So I expect, Salesforce will continue to grow. I expect we will be bigger. We're around in pure SaaS. No hosting, nothing else, but pure SaaS. We're around $1 billion right now. We're round numbers.
Sorry,
about $1 billion. But SAP, everyone. What are they going to do? If we take share from SAP in ERP, Salesforce doesn't do ERP. Workday has got very, very primitive. Let me give you a couple words on Workday. They don't use a database. They use an object store, so they can't really do reporting. And they use Flash as a user interface. So they can't run on iPhones or iPads. Besides that, they're great.
All right, on that note, over here.
So I'm not worried about Workday. I do think Salesforce has built a franchise over a long period of time, and they're going to be a formidable competitor in their space. I don't think Workday is. Whenever we have a head-to-head with Workday in the cloud, our human resources versus their human resources, we almost always win. And that's before we were fully launched. So I'm not worried about them. Their product's too immature and they're too small and frail. I'm not SAP, and they made horrible architectural mistakes. Horrible. No database.
Got it.
Mark uses a really good database. Salesforce uses a really good database. They use Oracle. And NetSuite uses a really good database, amazingly good database. They use Oracle.
And they use really good middleware. You know what they use? They use Oracle.
All right, we're going to get to the next question.
Workday.
All right.
So your question was, are we a loser? No.
Okay. Fantastic. Ralph. Ralph. That's how it's done.
I think most of the guys. The only guys I have trouble with are the Google guys.
Really? So Larry and Sergey, you have trouble with?
Larry specifically. I think.
Larry per se?
Yeah, Larry per se.
Why?
Because he makes the decisions over there. He runs that company. No one else runs that company. And they decided, let me be very clear, when you write a program for the Android phone, you write it, you use the Oracle tool or Oracle Java tools for everything. And at the very end, you press a button and said, convert this to Android format. We don't compete with Google. We don't do anything Google does. No. We just think they took our stuff and that was wrong. That's a completely separate issue.
But I mean, you think they're evil?
I think what they did was absolutely evil.
And you blame Larry Page?
100% Larry Page.
So if what they did is evil, that makes Larry Page evil?
No, it makes what he did evil, which is quite different. And I know his slogan is "Don't be evil."
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about.
And I think he slipped up this one time. But
so he's a good guy, except this one time when he.
This really bothers me. I don't see how he thinks you can just copy someone else's stuff. It really bothers me. You can't conform in business. You got to be very careful. The only way, if you adhere to conventional wisdom, if you do everything everyone else does in business, you're going to lose. The only way to get ahead, to really get ahead, is to be different.
My objection to cloud computing is the fact that everyone, and this is, cloud computing is not only the future of computing, Eddie. It is the present. And the entire past of computing is all cloud. I mean, Salesforce.com has been around for more than a decade, and so is NetSuite. NetSuite's been around longer than Salesforce, and people are saying, well, that's cloud computing. Google's now cloud computing. Everyone's cloud computing. My objection to cloud computing was everyone simply looks around computing as all cloud. I mean, Salesforce.com has been around for more than a decade. And so is NetSuite.
It's like 10 years ago.
NetSuite's been around longer than Salesforce.
The term's only 4 years old.
And
but everything is in the cloud now, and my objection is the absurdity.
You don't like
it? No, it's not that I don't like the idea of what is. I mean, it's this nonsense. The guys say, "Oh, it's in the cloud." Well, what is that? Then you say, "Are we dead?" Yeah, we're dead. If there's no hardware or software in the cloud, we are so screwed. But it's not water vapor. All it is a computer attached to a network. What are you talking about? I mean, what do you think Google runs on?
I'll ask you another.
Did they run on water vapor? I mean, cloud. It's databases.
How about the next question?
And operating systems and memory and microprocessors and the internet. And all of a sudden, it's none of that. It's the cloud. What are you talking about? Now, the VCs, I love the VCs. Oh, we only fund, is that cloud? Oh, yeah, whoa. Microsoft Word, change internet to cloud. Mass change, give it back to these nitwits on Sand Hill Road.
Thank you so much for watching. I made this video because Wafi Wafinho asked me to. So if there's a famous entrepreneur that you want me to profile next, leave it in the comments below and I'll see what I can do. I'd also love to know what your Larry's top 10 rules meant the most to you. What changes are you gonna make in your business as a result? Leave it in the comments below. I'm gonna join the discussion. Thank you so much for watching. Continue to believe, and I'll see you soon.
I love this place. Thank you all for coming out in the rain, the pouring rain. We're going to make this worth it for you. President Faust, Board of Overseers, faculty, friends, alumni, proud parents, members of the ad board, and graduates of the greatest university in the world, I am honored to be here with you today because, let's face it, you accomplished something I never could. If I get through this speech today, it'll be the first time I actually finish something here at Harvard. Class of 2017, congratulations. Now, I'm an unlikely speaker today, not just because I dropped out, but because we're technically in the same generation. We walked this yard less than a decade apart. We studied the same ideas and slept through the same Act 10 lectures. We may have taken different roads to get here, especially if you came all the way from the Quad. But today, I want to share what I've learned about our generation and the world we're all building together. But first, these last couple of days have brought back a lot of good memories. How many of you remember exactly where you were and what you were doing when you got that email telling you got into Harvard? I was playing the video game Civilization, and I ran downstairs and got my dad, and for some reason, his first reaction was to video me opening the email. That could have been a really, really sad video. But I swear, getting into Harvard is the thing my parents are most proud of me for. My mom is nodding. You all know what I'm talking about. Look, guys, it's tough to beat this. You'll see when you get out there. How many of you remember your first lecture here at Harvard? Mine was Computer Science 121 with the incredible Harry Lewis. Harry. I was running late for class, so I threw on a t-shirt, and I didn't realize until afterwards that I put it on inside out and backwards, and my tag was sticking out the front. I couldn't figure out why no one in class would talk to me. Except for this one guy, KX Jin. He just went with it. We started doing our problem sets together, and now he runs a big part of Facebook. And that, class of 2017, is why you should be nice to people. But my best memory from Harvard is meeting Priscilla. I had just launched this prank website, FaceMash, and the ad board wanted to see me. Everyone thought I was going to get kicked out. My parents drove up here to help me pack my stuff. My friends threw me a going-away party. Who does that? As luck would have it, Priscilla was at that party with her friends, and we met in line for the bathroom in the Foho Bell Tower, and in what must be one of the all-time most romantic lines, I turned to her and said, "I'm getting kicked out in 3 days, so we need to go on a date quickly." Actually, any of you graduating today can use that line. I'm getting kicked out today. We need to go on a date fast. I didn't end up getting kicked out. I did that to myself. Priscilla and I started dating, and, you know, that movie made it seem like FaceMash was so important to starting Facebook. It wasn't. But without FaceMash, I never would have met Priscilla. And Priscilla's the most important person in my life. So you could still say it was the most important thing I built in my time here. We have all started lifelong friendships here, and some of us even families. That's why I'm so grateful to this place. Thanks, Harvard. Today, I want to talk about purpose. But I'm not here to give you the standard commencement about finding your purpose. We're millennials. We try to do that instinctively. Instead, I'm here to tell you that finding your purpose isn't enough. The challenge for our generation is to create a world where everyone has a sense of purpose. One of my favorite stories is when JFK went to go visit the NASA Space Center, and he saw a janitor holding a broom, and he asked him what he was doing, and the janitor replied, "Mr. President, I'm helping put a man on the moon." Purpose is that feeling that you are a part of something bigger than yourself, that you are needed, and that you have something better ahead to work for. Purpose is what creates true happiness. And you are graduating at a time when this is especially important. When our parents graduated, that sense of purpose reliably came from your job, your church, your community. But today, technology and automation are eliminating many jobs. Membership in a lot of communities has been declining, and a lot of people are feeling disconnected and depressed and are trying to fill a void in their lives. As I've traveled around, I've sat with children in juvenile detention and opioid addicts who've told me that maybe their lives would have turned out differently if they just had something to do, an after-school program or somewhere to go. I've met factory workers who know their old jobs aren't coming back and are just trying to find their path ahead. For our society to keep moving forward, we have a generational challenge to not only create new jobs, but create a renewed sense of purpose. I remember that night I launched Facebook from that little dorm in Kirkland House. I went to Noakes with my friend KX, and I remember telling him clearly that I was excited to help connect the Harvard community, but one day someone would connect the whole world. The thing is, it never even occurred to me that that someone might be us. We were just college kids. We didn't know anything about that. There were all these great big technology companies with all these resources, and I just assumed one of them would do it. But this idea was so clear to us that all people want to connect. So we just kept working on it, day after day after day. And I know that a lot of you are going to have your own stories just like this. A change in the world that seems so clear that you are sure someone else is going to do it. But they're not. You will. But it's not enough to have that purpose yourself. You also have to create a sense of purpose for others. And I found that out the hard way. You see, my hope was never to build a company. I wanted to have an impact. And as all these people started joining us, I just assumed that that's what they wanted to do too. So I never took the time to explain what it was that I hoped we'd build. A couple years in, some big companies wanted to buy us. I didn't want to sell. I wanted to see if we could connect more people. And we were building the first version of Newsfeed at the time, and I thought, if we could just launch this, it could change how we all learn about the world. Nearly everyone else wanted to sell. Without a sense of higher purpose, this was their startup dream come true, and it tore our company apart. After one particularly tense argument, one of my close advisors told me if I didn't agree to sell the company right now, I would regret that decision for the rest of my life. Relationships were so frayed that within a year or so, every single person on our management team was gone. That was my hardest time leading Facebook. I believed in what we were doing, but I felt alone. And worse, it was my fault. I wondered if I was just wrong, an imposter, a 22-year-old kid who had no idea how things actually worked. Now, years later, I understand that is how things work when there's no sense of higher purpose. So it's up to all of us to create it so we can all keep moving forward together. And today, I want to talk about 3 ways that we can create a world where everyone has a sense of purpose. By taking on big, meaningful projects together. By redefining equality so everyone has the freedom to pursue their purpose. And by building community all across the world. So first, let's take on big, meaningful projects. Our generation is going to have to deal with tens of millions of jobs replaced by automation like self-driving cars and trucks. But we have the potential to do so much more than that. Every generation has its defining works. More than 300,000 people worked to put that man on the moon, including that janitor. Millions of volunteers immunized children around the world against polio, and millions of more people built the Hoover Dam and other great projects. And now it's our generation's turn to do great things. Now I know, maybe you're thinking, I don't know how to build a dam. I don't know how to get 1 million people involved in anything. Well, let me tell you a secret. No one does when they begin. Ideas don't come out fully formed. They only become clear as you work on them. You just have to get started. If I had to know everything about connecting people before I got started, I never would have built Facebook. Movies and pop culture just get this all wrong. The idea of a single eureka moment is a dangerous lie. It makes us feel inadequate because we feel like we haven't had ours yet. And it prevents people with seeds of good ideas from ever getting started in the first place. Oh, and you know what else movies get wrong about innovation? No one writes math formulas on glass, okay? All right? That's not a thing, okay? It's really good to be idealistic, but be prepared to be misunderstood. Anyone working on a big vision is going to get called crazy, even if you end up right. Anyone taking on a complex problem is going to get blamed for not fully understanding it, even though it's impossible to know everything up front. Anyone taking initiative will always get criticized for moving too fast because there's always someone who wants to slow you down. In our society, we often don't take on big things because we're so afraid of making mistakes that we ignore all the things wrong today if we do nothing. The reality is, anything we do today is going to have some issues in the future. But that can't stop us from getting started. So what are we waiting for? It is time for our generation-defining great works. How about stopping climate change before we destroy the planet and getting millions of people involved, manufacturing and installing solar panels? How about curing all diseases and getting people involved by asking volunteers to share their health data, track their health data, and share their genomes? You know, today, our society spends more than 50 times as much treating people who are sick as we invest in finding cures so people don't get sick in the first place. It makes no sense. We can fix this. How about modernizing democracy so everyone can vote online? And how about personalizing education so everyone can learn? These achievements are all within our reach. Let's do them all in a way that gives everyone in our society a role. Let's do big things, not just to create progress, but to create purpose. So taking on big, meaningful projects together is the first thing we can do to create a world where everyone has a sense of purpose. The second is redefining our idea of equality so everyone has the freedom to pursue their purpose. Now, many of our parents had stable jobs throughout their careers, but in our generation, we're all a little entrepreneurial, whether we're starting our own projects or finding our role in another one. And, you know, that's great, because our culture of entrepreneurship is how we create so much progress. An entrepreneurial culture thrives when it is easy to try lots of new ideas. Facebook wasn't the first thing I built. I also built chat systems and games, study tools and music players, and I'm not alone. J.K. Rowling got rejected 12 times before she finally wrote and published Harry Potter. Even Beyoncé had to make hundreds of songs to get Halo. The greatest successes come from having the freedom to fail. Now, today, we have a level of wealth inequality that hurts everyone. When you don't have the freedom to take your idea and turn it into a historic enterprise, we all lose. And right now, today, our society is way over-indexed on rewarding people when they're successful, and we don't do nearly enough to make sure that everyone can take lots of different shots. Now, let's face it, there is something wrong with our system when I can leave here and make billions of dollars in 10 years, while millions of students can't even afford to pay off their loans, let alone start a business. Look, I know a lot of entrepreneurs, and I don't know a single person who gave up on starting a business because they were worried they might not make enough money. But I know too many people who haven't had the chance to pursue their dreams because they didn't have a cushion to fall back on if they failed. We all know you don't get successful just by having a good idea or working hard. You get successful by being lucky too. If I had to support my family growing up instead of having the time to learn how to code, if I didn't know that I was going to be fine if Facebook didn't work out, then I wouldn't be standing up here today. And if we're honest, we all know how much luck we've had to get to this point in our lives. Every generation expands its definition of equality. Previous generations fought for the vote and civil rights. They had the New Deal and Great Society. And now it's time for our generation to define a new social contract. We should have a society that measures progress not just by economic metrics like GDP, but by how many of us have a role we find meaningful. We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas. We're all going to change jobs and roles many times, so we need affordable childcare to get to work and healthcare that's not tied to just one employer. And we're all going to make mistakes. So we need a society that's less focused on locking us up and stigmatizing us when we do. And as our technology keeps on evolving, we need a society that is more focused on providing continuous education through our lives. And yes, giving everyone the freedom to pursue purpose isn't going to be free. People like me should pay for it. And a lot of you are going to do really well, and you should too. That is why Priscilla and I started the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative and committed our wealth to promoting equal opportunity. These are the values of our whole generation. It was never a question of if we were going to do this. The only question was when. Millennials are already one of the most charitable generations in history. In just 1 year, more than 3 in 4 US millennials donated to charity, and more than 7 in 10 raised money for another one. But it's not just about giving money. You can also give time. And I promise you, if you just take an hour or two a week, that's all it takes to give someone a hand and help them reach their potential. Now, maybe you're thinking, that's a lot of time. I'm not sure if I have that much time. I used to think that. You know, when Priscilla graduated from Harvard, she became a teacher. And before she'd do education work with me, she told me that I needed to get my own experience teaching a class. At first, I complained. I said, I'm kind of busy. I'm running this company. But she insisted. So I taught an after-school program at the local Boys and Girls Club on entrepreneurship. I taught those kids lessons on product development and marketing, and they taught me what it was like growing up feeling targeted for your race, and what it's like having a family member in prison. I shared stories of my time in school, and they shared their hope that one day they would get to go to college too. For 5 years, I've had dinner with those students every month. One of them even threw Priscilla and me our first baby shower. And next year, they're going to college. Every one of them, first generation in their families. We can all make time to give someone a hand. Let's give everyone the freedom to pursue purpose, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because when more people can turn their dreams into something great, we are all better for it. Purpose doesn't only come from work. The third way we can create a sense of purpose for everyone is by building community. And in our generation, when we say purpose for everyone, we mean everyone in the world. Now, quick show of hands. How many of you here are from another country? All right, now keep your hands up. How many of you are friends with one of these folks? Now we're talking. See, we have grown up connected. In a recent survey of millennials around the world, asking what most defines our identity, the most popular answer wasn't nationality, ethnicity, or religion. It was citizen of the world. That's a big deal. Every generation expands the circle of people we consider one of us. And in our generation, that now includes the whole world. We understand that the great arc of human history bends towards people coming together in ever greater numbers, from tribes to cities to nations, to achieve things that we could not on our own. We get that our greatest opportunities are now global. We can be the generation that ends poverty, that ends disease. And we get that our greatest challenges need global responses too. No country can fight climate change alone or prevent pandemics. Progress now requires coming together, not just as cities or nations, but also as a global community. But we live in an unstable time. There are people left behind by globalization across the whole world. And it's tough to care about people in other places when we don't first feel good about our lives here at home. There's pressure to turn inwards. This is the struggle of our time. The forces of freedom, openness, and global community against the forces of authoritarianism, isolationism, and nationalism. Forces for the flow of knowledge, trade, and immigration against those who would slow them down. This is not a battle of nations. It is a battle of ideas. There are people in every country for more global connection, and there are good people against it. And this isn't going to be decided at the UN either. It's going to happen at the local level when enough of us feel a sense of purpose and stability in our own lives that we can start to open up and care about everyone else too. And the best way to do that is to start building local communities right now. We all get a lot of meaning from our communities. Who here's from Elliott House? How about Lowell? I know you guys found community because you literally live right on top of each other. And Mather? I'll just leave that there. Whether our communities are houses or sports teams, churches or a cappella groups, they give us that sense that we are a part of something bigger, that we are not alone. They give us the strength to expand our horizons. And that's why it's so striking that over the past few decades, membership in all kinds of communities has declined by as much as 1/4. That's a lot of people who now need to find a sense of purpose somewhere else. But I know that we can rebuild these communities and start new ones because many of you already are. I met Agnes Agoye, who's graduating today. Agnes, where are you? Agnes spent her childhood navigating conflict zones with human trafficking in Uganda, and now she's trained thousands of law enforcement officials to keep communities safe. I met Kayla Oakley and Neha Jain, who are graduating today too. Stand up, guys. Kayla and Neha started a nonprofit that connects people suffering from chronic illnesses with people in their communities who are willing to help out. And I met David Razu Aznar, who's graduating from the Kennedy School today. David, stand up. David is a former city councilor who fought to make Mexico City the first Latin American city to pass marriage equality, even before San Francisco. And this is my story too. A student in a dorm, connecting one community at a time and keeping at it until one day we can connect the whole world. Change starts local. Even global change starts small with people like us. In our generation, the struggle of whether we connect more, whether we achieve our greatest opportunities, comes down to this: your ability to build communities and create a world where every single person has a sense of purpose. Class of 2017, you are graduating into a world that needs purpose, and it's up to you to create it. Now, maybe you're asking yourself, can I really do this? Well, remember when I told you about that class I taught at the Boys and Girls Club? One day after class, I was talking to my students about going to college, and one of my top students raised his hand and said that he wasn't sure he could go to college because he's undocumented. He wasn't sure if they'd take him. Last year, I took him out to breakfast for his birthday, and I wanted to get him a gift, so I asked him what he wanted, and he just started talking about struggles that he saw other students in his class facing, and finally said, "You know, I'd really just like a book on social justice." I was blown away. Here is a young guy who has every reason to be cynical. He wasn't sure if the country he calls home, the only one he's known, was going to deny him his dream of going to college. But he wasn't feeling sorry for himself. He wasn't even thinking of himself. He has a greater sense of purpose, and he's going to bring people along with him. It says something about our situation today that I can't even say his name because I don't want to put him at risk. But if a high school senior who doesn't know what the future holds for him can do his part to move the world forward, then we owe it to the world to do our part too. So before you walk out those gates one last time, and as we sit here in front of Memorial Church, I'm reminded of a prayer, Misha Berach. That I say whenever I face a big challenge, that I sing to my daughter, thinking of her future when I tuck her in at night. And it goes, may the source of strength, who's blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. I hope you find the courage to make your life a blessing. Congratulations, class of 2017. Good luck out there.
Good afternoon. It's a very exciting session for me. I consider myself as an entrepreneur, even if I'm a social entrepreneur working for the public good. But to have at my side someone who is considered as one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our times, Sergey Brin, who is, as you know, the co-founder and president of Alphabet. I think it's a unique opportunity to exchange some views with you. And I wonder whether I should take my tie off or not. But let me go immediately into the subject. We talk a lot about the fourth industrial revolution. And I have written a book 1 year ago. When I look at the contents, I have the feeling such a lot is already outdated. What was considered a year ago science fiction is already reality. So maybe my first question to you is, where do you see the edges and the next frontiers of the fourth industrial revolution?
That's a fantastic question. First of all, let me just tell all of you that you maybe should doubt my answers a little bit. So when I was heading up Google X a few years back, and one little project we had in there, which is now called Google Brain, which was this AI effort, but I didn't pay attention to it at all, to be perfectly honest. And myself having been trained as a computer scientist in the 90s, everybody knew AI didn't work. It's not like, people tried it. They tried neural nets. None of them worked out. And this fellow who was, one of our top computer scientists, Jeff Dean, would periodically come up with me and, look, the computer made a picture of a cat. And I'd say, okay, that's very nice, Jeff. Go, do your thing, whatever. And fast forward a few years, and now Brain probably touches every single one of our main projects, ranging, from search to photos to ads to everything we do. And this kind of revolution in deep nets has been very profound and definitely surprised me, even though I was like right in there sitting, like I could throw, paper clips at him. It's an incredible time, and it's very hard to forecast. What can these things do? We don't really know the limits. And in 100 years, if we imagine ourselves that, that these can do kind of everything we can imagine and more, it's a hard thing to think through and has really incredible possibilities. But I think it's impossible to forecast accurately.
But Sergey, would you see more the positive side? Of course, as an entrepreneur, you have to see the positive side. But do you see also possible risks in all those fancy, if I may use this word, new means which we will have at our disposal?
I think it definitely requires some thought and incredibly, and I'm here at Davos, and I'm just shocked at how I feel like the Luddite in the room. You know, everybody's talking about, well, how do we cope with this increased automation here and the jobs displaced and so forth? And you know, I feel like the one like, oh, you know, actually that's pretty hard to do with a computer, and I kind of know what we're trying to accomplish to make that technology work. And I think a lot of folks here are, I think, correctly forward-thinking, taking some of those innovations for granted, and then saying, well, what does that mean for society and so forth? I think that's the right thing to do. I think thinking through sort of AI as the continuing of the automation that we've seen in the past 200 years, and how that evolves society and economy and social order, that's the smart thing to do. I don't think it's sort of impossible somehow, but it deserves a lot of thought.
You cannot, let's say, stop it. You can channel it. And but I want to follow up a little bit about the horizons. We speak about our times now being, let's say, shaped by the digital revolution. Some people would say, when we sit here again, you came over 10 years ago as one of our young global leaders. For the first time here, when we sit again together in 10 years, we may much more talk about the biological revolution. And of course, then there's a combination of the biological and the digital revolution. Can you explain your thinking? Can you explain us your thinking in this respect, particularly because I know you are very interested in the medical issues also?
Yeah. Well, I think you can approach health from several levels and say, well, what are the specific things that we are afflicted with, whether it's heart health or cancer, Parkinson's, I'm personally passionate about, and look at the specifics of treatments and understanding of those diseases. You can look at the more, this is the dilemma I have, as I kind of invest in Parkinson's research. Should I be doing that, or should I be investing in more fundamental research? You've seen what CRISPR, for example, has allowed biologists across all disease categories to use that kind of a tool. And it's just a more general kind of biochemistry innovation. And genomics has obviously brought us a lot of innovation there broadly. But then you could also ask the next question now, leading to what you said about the digital revolution. Well, if we had smarter processing, smarter software, could it unveil, patterns and understanding? Should we just be working on sort of the machine learning solutions that are broadly going to allow us to do more in biology, but also in other fields, in economy and electronics and astronomy? So, it's a whole set of layers. And these lower level layers, the increased machine learning and so forth, kind of spans the gamut of human endeavors. And therefore, when you invest in those things, you get this multiplied effect. But of course, you still need to do the biology, and then you need to understand the individual diseases, and ultimately you need to treat individual people.
So big data, digital tools at the service of medical and biological progress and advancing very fast. But can you imagine that in 10 years when we are sitting here, we have an implant in our brains, and I can immediately feel, because you all will have implants, and we measure your brain waves, and I can immediately tell you how the people react, or I can feel how the people react to your answers. Is it imaginable?
I think that is imaginable. I think I think, you can imagine that. You can imagine, well, you're going to be sort of transplanted into, the internet, so to speak, to live forever in a digital realm. You can imagine that, you just in your biological incarnation are going to live to be some, very long age. I think it is almost impossible to predict. And in fact, the evolution of technology might be inherently chaotic. I mean, it could have been the case a couple hundred years back if it so happened that, electricity evolved a little bit faster compared to internal combustion, that we all would have been driving electric cars today, and then somebody would have a newfangled internal combustion thing that would be like, whoa, that's kind of weird. But history happened to go one way. Maybe there are fundamental inherent reasons for that. But I think when you ask these kinds of questions about the future, what does it mean to be human in the future? What does it mean to be an individual versus society? Kind of where are we going in the long term? I mean, these are deep and powerful and fundamental philosophical questions, but I don't know that we are equipped to answer them.
I think it's premature because we don't know yet how the technology will look like. But one fear which I have heard is that technology now is, and digital technologies mainly have an analytical power. Now we go into a predictive power, and we have seen the first examples, and your company very much involved into it. But then the next step could be to go into a prescriptive mode, which means you do not even have to have elections anymore because you can already predict, and afterwards you can say, why do we need elections? Because we know what the result will be. Can you imagine such a world?
Well, you might then further ask, well, why do we need to have elected leaders at all? Because you might as well have all the decisions made. I think that's, once again, I mean, you're venturing into, I think, profound questions. You can ask also, what will we actually want? I mean, we have a set of values and desires today that are probably pretty different than, before the Industrial Revolution, and different still than before the Agrarian Revolution. And we might continue to evolve. And many of us today participate, obviously, all of us probably, in the global economy, developing and so forth. Some of us choose to be, Buddhist monks, and we just seek enlightenment through our spirituality. So, I mean, I think people have different ways of evolving and finding meaning in different situations. And it could be that the way we look at it 100 years from now is so different than we look at it today that it's almost unrecognizable for us, the thinking, the rationale, and the desires. We wouldn't even be able to translate.
I think this is a very, not only interesting, it's a crucial issue. We are looking at technology very often threatening our present thinking, interpretation of how the world evolves. And actually, we need new, you used the word meaning, we need new concepts to define what humanity is and what the purpose of our lives is. And we may go much more again into the direction of, people are afraid of robotization, but it may be humanization, which robotization will allow. This is a very optimistic, let's say, perception, which personally I share, but would you agree?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think if you were to go back in time 10,000 years and you meet somebody out there, working their field, you would say, and they said, well, where are you from? They probably wouldn't even ask you, what do you do? That wouldn't be a meaningful question. But if you were to say, well, I'm an economist, they'll be like,
what is it?
Plow my field, and then, we can talk more about, whatever it is you mean you do. I think it is exactly true. I think that if some of the burdens of day-to-day life that have been increasingly alleviated through technology, through agriculture, and so forth. Maybe that leaves us free to really think a little bit more deeply about who it is we are and what it is we seek.
But those new technology paradigms need also, I would say, a new governance paradigm. If I think of the old-fashioned, let's say, governments see a technological development or regulatory agencies, there's a parliamentary commission, finally regulations come out after 5 years. This is absolutely not suited anymore to our new technologies. So we need much more agile interaction between business, regulators, civil society, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, and once again, I've been really blown away this year. As you know, I haven't been to the forum for about 8 years. I think the level of enlightenment and conversation between politicians and business leaders and social entrepreneurs is incredible to me. And that's the kind of interaction I think that'll breed success. And I think also, don't forget, outside of here, oftentimes it's a very antagonistic relationship between government and business and so forth. And I think that also is very unhealthy. So I think not only, should we try to tackle things more quickly, but also in a real collaborative way.
I think some of this, let's say, antagonistic view comes because people see particularly the effect on job elimination. And of course, Schumpeter's rule of creative destruction or destructive creation. And people have difficulties to see the jobs of the future. I explain you will have maybe we are in need of, robot polishers or drone dispatchers, but I think there are limited possibilities for such skills. Where do you see the skills which I think you in Alphabet, you do not have enough people. You are permanently looking for people. But where are those jobs coming from, and what skills do you particularly emphasize?
I think, look, that is a fantastic question. And I think, in the sessions I've attended, everybody's asking that question. I guess I would hope that as some of the, maybe more mundane tasks are alleviated through technology, that people find more and more creative and meaningful ways to spend their time. I think, the way the word job specifically, has a lot of implication and a lot of, the way that we might have spent the past couple of generations. Like, a job means you go to the office, like here, and you do some things, you have some papers, you have an inbox, you have an outbox. And I think so our mindset is somewhat narrow in that way. And yet we have jobs that are more creative and thoughtful. Take economists, for example, which is a hard thing to describe to a farmer.
Fortunately, I'm an engineer.
Yeah. So. Oh, you're an engineer. Sorry. Okay, we have some economists here. It is the World Economic Forum. I think
not engineering forum.
Sorry. Engineering is pretty easy to describe, I think, to folks. Yeah. But being an economist is not like that easy to describe, and it's not that we need 5 billion economists, but the point is that I think if you sort of continue that trajectory, you do see more and more people that have been freed up over the past couple hundred years to do work that is, more kind of thinking about things or creating things, seeking aesthetics, whether it is in an intellectual domain or a purely artistic domain. And I would hope to see that trend continue. And I would hope that the world would find, an opportunity This is where I think education becomes very important. And I think broad education. But as some of these jobs are displaced, giving people the opportunity to get educated from the point of view of having actually the education resources, the financial wherewithal to be able to pursue that. Like, you don't want to be studying Shakespeare and going hungry or something like that. And being somewhat open-minded, giving people a chance to develop different skills that aren't necessarily, okay, we have 5,000 needs for this exact kind of thing today. Because probably the thing that you want exactly 5,000 of today is the thing that also is more realistically automatable. So I think it's important for people to be able to have freedom to study, financial opportunity to study, and to get meaning. I think in addition to work being an important way that we exchange money and whatnot, people find profound meaning in their day-to-day jobs, and I think that's another important thing for us to preserve.
Okay, I would say this is the key, let's say, message for me, or the hope, that we can move from jobs which are meaningless much more to meaningful tasks. And say maybe in the social area, in the cultural area, and that will be the underlying concept for a more humanized society. But I also agree with you, we need, we shouldn't look at individual jobs now, where do we need 5,000 jobs more and so on. The key is the reformation of the whole educational system, which is completely outdated. Would you agree?
I think there are several systems that we have in place that I think for a lot of understandable reasons, they just have so much inertia, they lag behind. Education is one, and healthcare, honestly, is another. And I don't mean healthcare in the sense of finding the biological roots of disease. I mean, sort of the healthcare systems of hospitals and, maybe insurance, be it national or employer or whatnot. These systems are just so deeply embedded from an infrastructure point of view, from a sort of governance point of view, and so forth. They're very hard to transform and to update to today's needs. But I think that is a challenge that we should seek to overcome. And within education, I just think everyone should have access to education. And I'm talking about obviously sort of primary education and secondary and university, and for that matter, postgraduate work. Those things those things are extraordinarily expensive today for kind of artifacts of the infrastructure. We assume we need like big buildings and fancy classrooms and things like that. And I don't think those things are necessary. It's fine to have those for some folks, but education should be universally accessible.
Yeah. When I look at, it's incredible the success of your company. And when I look at Silicon Valley in general, the success is mainly related also to a platform approach, and it's a new management concept. And of course, many people envy you because you are in this area where you have this exponential growth potential. And this creates also some, not only envies, also some, how shall I say, it's more than envy, it's aversion against the Silicon Valley model because you can grow so fast. What would be your response?
I think first of all, I'm very lucky to have been in Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley is very lucky to have been able to benefit from the semiconductor boom, and then software, and now internet and mobile. I think it's there's a huge amount of luck there, but the luck also comes from taking many shots. So many failures. If I told you all the dumb things that I did, we'd have to have a much longer session. And the successes, they often are chance. I mean, I mentioned the Google Brain work that they were just off in the corner. I was like, okay, fine, just do your thing. Verily, which is our subsidiary that does a wide range of healthcare innovation now, really started with this glucose sensing contact lens project. And that was another one where I said, this fellow Babak and Brian Otis, who were working on it, and they wanted to put a computer in a contact lens. And I was like, you know what, that sounds crazy, but you go do your crazy thing. You can only have a couple people work on it. I'm not going to give you a lot of resources. But sure, if you put a computer in contact lens, good for you. And yet here they are, a few years later, and they're, running, they're doing serious studies now. They have a big partnership with Novartis and Alcon, and they are, hopefully going to bring those to market alongside with a bunch of other projects that has spawned. And I didn't know anything about that, and I never would have predicted or guessed that. I think we're just lucky to have the environment that tolerates making lots of risky bets and tolerating the failures that inevitably result.
And it needs courage. I mean, I could ask you the question I'm very often asked, starting the forum with two people. Some journalists ask me, media people ask me, did you ever imagine what is coming out? Could you ever imagine what came out of your original entrepreneurial first steps?
No, I could not possibly have imagined. But and I don't know what your thinking was behind the forum, but I remember when I was really thinking deeply about this, and this was sort of a graduate student project at Stanford, and I talked to my advisor. I was like, should I really do this entrepreneurial thing? And it might not work out, and I can just finish my PhD. And he said, why not? Go for it. And then if it doesn't work out, you come back, you finish your PhD, which I'm still planning on doing. But anyway, there's like no big deal. Just give it a shot. And I think that mentality permeates Silicon Valley, and I think that's one of the strengths that there's really not much. It's not viewed so negatively to try something, even if it doesn't work out.
No. When you look back now to this history, and you have I would say many young people listening to you here or via digital transmission, what would you, out of your own experience, give as an advice to those young people? Who everybody sees you as a role model and wants to imitate you. What would you tell them as a key learning of your own?
I think young people, in some ways, their life is much easier than, sort of my life might have been at that stage. Just, for, I think, all of us, having before, whatever, if we were traveling to Switzerland, it'd be a big stressful thing. How do you get in touch with people before mobile phones, arrange your travel, figure out how to exchange your currency? There are many things, we can whip our phones out and look up anything and figure out how to get somewhere. There are a lot of affordances that are such conveniences today that make it easy. But there's also a global stage that makes it hard, actually. Because when I was in school and I was on the math team or whatever, I was just compared to other kids in the school, and I did quite well against them, and I found myself, I'm good at that, I'm good at that. I think I find younger folks today their measures of themselves are always, especially, the ambitious ones, are on this global stage. It's said like, well, I have to be, number one in the world at this or that. And I'm like, that's a really tall order. And I think it can be discouraging in a way because if, those folks say, well, I'm number 1,000 in the world at this game, which, in my world would have been an enormous achievement because that means like you were definitely the best in like your city and your state and whatnot. But it's hard. And I think, there's a little bit of discouragement. So, I would encourage young folks to, take chances and pursue their dreams and try to silence out kind of the voices that say, well, actually, there are like 1,000 startups trying to do whatever, self-riding bicycles or whatever it is they happen to be doing.
And I think the key is to have fun in your startup and not from the beginning on to think of the IPO, which may bring you $1 billion. That's key. And that was certainly not your motivation to make it a success.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly had no dreams of such economic success. And I think you're exactly right. I think you should have fun and not be so weighed down by the weight of expectations. That I think sort of this global network, unfortunately, one of the downsides, I think it creates that weight.
We are coming to an end of this fascinating discussion, but my last question would be, I came from a luncheon and we had a discussion. We said, or the conclusion was, we can address the issues which we have to confront in the world, not just in a rational way. The world in some way has to digest this tremendous speed of change, complexity of change, which creates an emotional turmoil. So we have to respond much more also with values and not just with rational answers. And what would be your values? What are your driving values, Sergey?
Well, first of all, I think that's a very good question, an amazing question. And not having been in Davos in 8 years or so, I'm like kind of even confused in a good way. Because all these, business executives and CEOs and everybody's wondering, well, how are people going to find purpose? And what about all these, refugees? What about income inequality? I kind of feel like I'm at Burning Man, but almost, except we're all wearing clothes. But I think it's a wonderful thing. So I think. For whatever weird reason, maybe it's because we're kind of San Francisco hippies, but Google has always had this a little bit of that kind of social responsibility view. Also inspired, by the way, by Salesforce, Mark Benioff, and his philanthropic work as part of the company. I think you're phrasing it exactly correctly. I think it can't be the case that companies such as ours are just purely profit motivated. Sort of you can't just take, Adam Smith. Well, apparently I've learned here that Adam Smith's earlier work was actually much more touchy-feely than The Wealth of Nations. But you can't just, think about narrowly, oh, this is your business. You're just going to maximize earnings. It doesn't matter what else is going on around you. And I think the leaders here, from what I can tell, are broadly concerned about, be it climate change or wealth inequality or, this issue of job creation, all of those things. And so it seems to me that companies are taking those things seriously, and we ought to be. And maybe there's some greater way to write about that, to imbibe that in kind of the principles of company formation. Because I don't think sort of, if you look at the laws and the regulations and, SEC kind of rules, technically you're meant to be purely profit seeking, and that's not really a reasonable position to take.
Sergey, it's a great opportunity to unfortunate opportunity, because I would like to have much more time to conclude this session. And what you just said is, particularly with, let's say, some Silicon Valley companies like yours, people see those companies having tremendous power. And I was recently together with a prime minister of quite an important country who told me there are 3 or 4 powers left in the world. One is US, one is China, and one is Alphabet. So you have this, let's say, image of a very powerful organization. And I think this session was very important because it showed us that behind those organizations are people who are not detached from the world. people who ask themselves still questions. They do not now necessarily make everything possible to reign over the world. No, those are people who have questions, who have doubts, who, in your case, I may say so, who are modest. So I think this session was very important, and I thank you for sharing with us not only your ideas but your personality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great session.